Hi guys, welcome to Mike's Guitar Workshop. 3D printers are great, eh? I just printed myself this 16-inch radiusing block that we're going to be using on this Les Paul, Ibanez Les Paul. The fretboard has delaminated from the neck just in front here. The tuners are completely trashed, so they need to be replaced. There are some cracks in the paintwork, but the top itself is in great condition. It's going to be in two parts. The one we're going to just do the refret work, which is quite a procedure, and in the second part of the video we will do the refinishing. But yeah, let's get cracking. Right, so the first thing I do is I apply some little bit of water with an earbud, and then I come with some solder just to heat up the fret, and as soon as the water bubbles, then you know that you've reached the depth of the tang, and then it should be good to pull. As you can see, I'm having a bit of a hard time because the frets are so flat that there's not much grip for the fret pullers. In fact, most of the frets were so low that I had to come in with a chisel just to get underneath the fret, just to lift the edge slightly. Once the edge is lifted, then you can come with your fret pullers again. I keep checking my progress with another 3D printed tool, which is actually just one little section of the radiusing block, just to make sure that the radius is conforming to what I want. I also keep checking that the fretboard is staying level or becoming level. After that, I'm going to sand with some progressively finer sandpaper just by hand, just to get the scratches out of the fretboard and the inlays. And I think I ended up with 1000 sandpaper. And this is the end result. It's like a brand new fretboard. So now it comes time to clean the slots. I've got my little saw there that you'll see that I've just left the very last tooth of it, and that is just the right thickness to get inside there. And then I start from the one side, but I don't go all the way to the other side of the binding in case I loosen the binding. I don't want it to get caught there. The fret slots need to be absolutely clean, no bits of glue left behind, else the new fret won't seat. So here I'm coming from the other side now. I get right in there and I get all the last bits of wood, glue and whatever else might still be in there. Now I'm coming with my little triangular file. I'm just filing the very top of the fretboard, and this gives the glue somewhere to go and also helps to prevent tear out should it need a refret in the future. One final clean just to make sure there's nothing left inside. Here I'm just sorting the pre-cut frets that I bought in size order, just to make sure I've got the right sizes for the shape of the fretboard. These came pre-cut, as you see over there. Slightly radiused. I will re-radius them just a little bit more before I put the frets in. This is how I've radiused the frets. They're slightly over radiused, and that helps the ends seat in, which I tap in first, and then I go through to the center and back to the sides. use the feeler gauge just to make sure that there's no gaps. Once you've finished the whole fretboard, I'm now coming with my little straight edge because I want to level the frets as little as possible to give the client as much life out of the frets as possible. So I try and get them as level as possible before I even do anything else, and that eliminates having to level the fretboard. In fact, this fretboard I didn't need to level, there were no high spots, but yeah, that's the way I do it. But most people will then go and level the fretboard and re-crown, but I try and avoid that. Here I'm just using a hand file just to get the bulk of the fret ends off. Once I've done that, I'm coming out with my file. It's got a blunt end that runs along the fretboard, so I've got no fear of damaging it. And I like to approach it from this angle because then I can see exactly what it is that I'm doing. Some people go from the other angle, but this is my preferred method. I keep checking my work to see that there's a nice, even, smooth feel to all the frets. Here on a rubber block, I'm just with some 400 sandpaper, just rounding off some more of whatever is left that I might have missed, and I do the frets as well at the same time, just to get rid of any scratches or hammer marks. Then I come with some 600 sandpaper and I go over all the frets as well as the edges. And finally, I'm going to polish with some steel wool. And here's the end results. So we're just going to start with some, I think I'm using 800 sandpaper here. Bit of wet and dry because the surface is quite good, so I want to retain that and just use that as a base. And I'm using a small wooden block here and keeping very square to the corners so as not to introduce any round edges. A little bit of soapy water, and yeah, we just keep going until we've got a nice flat surface. Now I'm just coming with a piece of Scotch-Brite, because the block doesn't get everywhere, and this just ensures that there's nice adhesion for the masking which is coming just now. And this is basically what you're looking for, a nice featureless surface with no shiny spots. These tuners will have to go because they don't hold tune. I'm going to replace them with one similar to this. So we need to close up the holes because the new tuners only have one hole and none of these match. So I'm just going to put some super glue, some thick CA glue on a cocktail stick, matchstick, cocktail stick. I'll press it in as deep as it can go. And I just carry on until I've filled up all the holes. Then we just come out with our nippers and just clip off the ends. So holding the chisel flat to the surface, we just slice off what we don't need. Now with a block and some 800 sandpaper again, just going to flatten off all those bits in preparation for some primer. And it's very important to keep your block square to the surface. Don't sand with your fingers, because you'll never get it flat and you're going to leave wavy lines. I see a lot of guys that are doing this sort of stuff, they just sand with their fingers, and yeah, that's no good. Always use a block if you can. Here I'm just drop filling some super glue on all the chips, and that'll also ensure that none of the paint flakes off a little later. The super glue will go underneath the paint. And once again with a block, I'm sanding flat to the surface so that all my edges are nice and square and crisp. Use a round piece, some round tool if you need to. I've just clamped the headstock to the vise, and this ensures that I have a nice square, sharp corner. It's time for masking now, so I'm using some automotive fine line tape here. It doesn't leave glue residue behind, and it bends quite nicely to some corners. Not all corners, you'll see when we come to the horn. There's a little trick that we do. But patience is your key, and a very keen eye. And you'll just notice how I'm holding the tape. I'm putting a little bit of pressure with my thumb while I'm holding the tape, and that prevents the tape from warping. So there's just a nice round corner to the tape, and just a little bit of pressure, tension, just to keep the tape nice and sturdy. So for this corner I'm just putting some transparent tape down, and I will cut that corner a little later with a very sharp scalpel. Here I'm cutting the very sharp corner with a fine sharp scalpel, and not too much pressure, just enough to break the tape. You don't want to be cutting into the paint, if at all possible. So the idea is to do 2 semi-dry coats just to give the paint some adhesion, and you can almost do these one after another because the paint dries pretty quickly, but you don't want to blast the paint on from the beginning. So just 2 dry coats followed by 3 or 4 heavy coats. Here I'm just sanding the primer away that we put where we closed up the holes. And you'll notice I'm using a block again. So we're sanding the black paint now. I'm just using a piece of Scotch-Brite because there was no dust or anything. So I just want to roughen it up really for the clear coat. There's no need to sand it completely flat. And I'm using a bit of sandpaper here just to nib the edges because I don't want any bumps when I put the clear coat on. So I'm very carefully just going around, just de-nibbing the edges. So this is what we're looking for, a nice flat featureless base, and as always preparation is key. So the better you prepare, or the better your prep work, the better the final result. So here's the first coat of clear. Again, just a dust coat. You'll see I'm going pretty quickly. I just want the clear to have something to tack onto. So I'm not pumping it on at this point, just a quick dust coat, and you can just wait 3 to 4 minutes before you put on the final 3 heavy coats. Same goes for the body. Tack rag, highly important. Wear a mask. And here's the very first coat. It's just pretty dry, nothing spectacular, but still even. And quite a distance away because I don't want the paint to be too wet at this stage. Here's the final coat of clear. You'll see I'm going much slower now. This is the 4th coat that I put on. So it was 2 dry coats. And sorry, it's the 5th coat, and 3 heavy slow coats because I don't want to do a double clear coat, which means sanding everything down and doing another version. So I'm kind of pumping it on here, but I'm waiting 10 minutes before each next coat. The neck basically just needed some polishing. It needed no sanding or anything in between. It's quite a small part. So I'm just hand buffing it with some finishing polish. Here I'm sanding the body with some 1000, then 1500. And then I land up at 2000 before I buff. So the first round with a buffer, this is some finishing paste. It's not the bottle that's behind there, that's the final version. So I've just got a clean sponge, it's slightly damp. And I first let the finishing paste work its way into the little scratches, and what happens actually is the paint warms up and it sort of melds together. That's basically what happens. And of course the paste is also helping to smooth out all the scratch lines. So I'm just going very slowly, and you'll always notice that I'm going, the buffer is turning away from the edges, it doesn't turn into the edge. And that'll prevent the buffer catching on anything. And I just keep going slowly until the paste starts going dry, and then I stop. This is the final waxing. Now I'm using that liquid polish that's in the bottle, much finer than the finishing paste in the white tub, and this gives it its final sheen. Here's a close-up of the end result. I'm sure you'll agree that's quite acceptable for any guitar. Just sanding the old flaked gold off with a Scotch-Brite in one direction, and that'll give all the metal a nice brushed look. I did all the hardware this way. This and the screws I just gave a light coat of clear coat just to prevent any tarnishing later. It's time to give a top a burnish, and I'm just using the finishing liquid that's in the bottle behind me, because the top was basically in very good condition. I didn't flat sand this at all. I just buffed it basically. Here's the final result of the front. I'm sure you'll agree it looks like brand new. I've sprayed the backplate, my vintage reborn backplate, with some bronze paint. So I'm just sanding the top off and sanding that flat, and then I'll just come with a permanent marker and just black out all the parts that I want black, and that will get 2 light coats of clear coat just to seal all that in. Here I'm reaming out the holes for the new pegs. I did the first one and then I marked it with a piece of tape. So now I can just turn the reamer until I'm flush with the tape, then I know they're all the same size. Pre-drilled some holes just to ease the screws in. So thanks guys, thanks for joining. I'm going to leave you here now with some samples. Please like and subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.